Hi everyone. I haven't been reading for a while. It is now the middle of the summer, July 16th, and I'm going to start reading a book that I remembered I read to my classes a long time ago, and I thought some of you might enjoy. It is called The Whipping Boy by Sid Fleischman and illustrated by Peter Sis. And it takes place a long time ago, maybe in England or a country like that. And we'll see what a whipping boy is and what happened to this pair. It says in the beginning, to explain it, a shout comes echoing up the stairway. Fetch the whipping boy. A young orphan named Jemmy rouses from his sleep. Ain't I already been whipped twice today? Gaw, what's that prince done now? It was forbidden to spank, thrash, or whack the heir to the throne. Jemmy had been plucked from the streets to serve as a whipping boy to the arrogant and spiteful Prince Brat. Dreaming of running away, Jemmy finds himself trapped in Prince Brat's own dream, at once brash and perilous. In this briskly told tale of high adventure, taught with suspense and rich with colorful characters, the whipping boy and Prince Brat must at last confront each other. So I'll get into it a little bit here. Chapter 1, in which we observe a hair-raising event. The young prince was known here and there and just about everywhere else as Prince Brat. Not even black cats would cross his path. One night the king was holding a grand feast. Sneaking around behind the lords and ladies, Prince Brat tied their powdered wigs to the back of the oak chairs. Then he hid behind a footman to wait. When the guests stood up to toast the king, their wigs came flying off. The lords clasped their bare heads as if they'd been scalped. The ladies shrieked. Prince Brat, he was never called that to his face, of course, tried to keep from laughing. He clapped both his hands over his mouth, but out it ripped a cackle of ha ha and hee hees. The king spied him, and he looked mad enough to spit ink. He gave a furious shout. Fetch the whipping boy. Prince Brat knew he had nothing to fear. He had never been spanked in his whole life. He was a prince, and it was forbidden to spank, thrash, cuff, smack, or whip a prince. A common boy was kept in the castle to be punished in his place. Fetch the whipping boy. The king's command traveled like an echo from guard to guard up the stone stairway to a small chamber in the draughty north tower. An orphan boy named Jemmy, the son of a rat catcher, roused from his sleep. He had been dreaming happily of his ragged but carefree life before he had been plucked from the streets and sewers of the city to serve as the royal whipping boy. The guard shook him awake. On your feet, me boy. Jeremy's eyes blazed up. Ain't I already been whipped twice today? Gaw, what's that prince done now? Let's not keep the folks a-waitin', lad. In the main hall the king said, 20 whacks. Defiantly biting back every yelp and cry, the whipping boy received 20 whacks. And here's Prince Brat in the front and Jemmy in the back with the guards. Then the king returned to the prince, and let that be a lesson to you. Yes, papa. The prince lowered his head so as to appear humble and contrite, but all the while the feeling of growing exasperation with his whipping boy. In the tower chamber the prince fixed him with a scowl. You're the worst whipping boy I ever had. How come you never bawl? Dunno, said Jemmy with a shrug. A whipping boy is supposed to yowl like a stuck pig. We dress you up fancy and feed you royal, don't we? It's no fun if you don't bawl. Jeremy shrugged again. He was determined never to spring a tear for the prince to gloat over. Yelp and bellow next time, hear? Or I'll tell papa to give you back your rags and kick you back to the streets. Jeremy's spirit soared. Much obliged, your royal offernness, he thought. I'll take me rags, and I'll be gone in half blink of an eye. Chapter 2, wherein the prince cannot write his name. Jemmy could count on a thrashing first thing in the morning. Sure and certain, he thought as he pulled on his fine velvet breeches and his silk stockings, the prince wouldn't know his lessons, and the royal tutor was quick with the fly swatter with a willow switch, and Jemmy would be back in rags. "Take a last look at me, Pa, rest your bones," he muttered to himself. "Did you ever think I'd be holed up in the king's own castle and be rigged up in duds that would shame a peacock? Reckon I'll fetch a pair of sharp-toothed ferrets and go rat-catching, same as you, Pa." The tutor, Master Peckwit, had a round face with fat cheeks. He pointed his switch at the prince. "You fiddle-faddle scholar," he bellowed. "One day you'll be king, and you still don't know the alphabet from pig's tracks." The prince snapped his fingers. "I can always get someone to read for me." "You can't so much as write your name." "Pish posh! I can always get someone to write my name for me." The tutor's cheeks, swelling with anger, almost unhorsed the small spectacles saddling his nose. It would be easier to educate a boiled cabbage. "Prepare to be punished, your lordship." "10 whacks at least," said the prince, "and good and hard, if you please." Jemmy, who was obliged to be close at hand for the daily lessons, reckoned that freedom was now close at hand. The prince threw him a smirking glance as Master Peckwith raised his switch and beat the whipping boy like a carpet. Jemmy didn't bawl, he didn't yelp or bellow. 10 whacks and not a sound escaped his lips. "You contrary rascal," said the prince. "I'm on to you, Jeremy from the streets. It's pure spite that you won't howl. Think you can cross me and get away with it? Ha! Never and nohow." "Gaw," thought Jemmy, he's going back on his word. "And don't try to run away. I'll have you tracked down till your tongue hangs out like a red flag." And so it went on for more than a year. The prince learned nothing. The whipping boy learned to read, write, and do sums. And we'll find out the next chapter tomorrow. Good night.